Welcome, everybody. This is a special St. Patrick's Day IC topic chats. We're talking about consulting luck. Oh, and I didn't even finish with who. I guess I get to do those introductions. We are joined once again by Jessica Metcalf. She's joined us before as a co-host in the past. We've got Michael Bradley and we've got Emma Dewar. Emma is a unfortunate former resident of Iowa City. She went to school at the University of Iowa, and I can't understand why anybody would do that when they have an option to go to Iowa State University, which is a clearly better institution. I'm sorry, Emma. It's a University of Iowa is a very great institution, but you have to give trouble when you go to the other institution. That always gets kind of knocked around. We're like second class next to the University of Iowa, of course. But why don't we do a quick introduction? And by way of introduction, I'm going to ask each of our panel to give a little conversation about who they are, talk about how they got started, but just give a little bit of an idea about something that might have happened to you that you'd consider lucky as part of that. But so I'm going to start with Jessica. She's with Green Mountain. Hello, it's St. Patrick's Day. How perfect. We have Green Mountain with us today, right? So Jessica, why don't you just give a little bit of background to who you are, how you got started, a little origination story, and talk about something that you found was pretty lucky about what you do.
Sure, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I know I've met a bunch of you guys before on these chats and in other locations. I'm Jessica Metcalf. I am located in Southern Vermont, and my company is called Green Mountain Evaluation. I have been independent consulting full-time for a little over a year now. But prior to that, was dabbling in independent consulting and evaluation for probably 5 years prior while I was in grad school. So I went to grad school at the University of Illinois, got my master's in public health and my PhD in human development and family studies there. I fell immediately into a postdoc position that, was definitely the path of least resistance. But early on, while I was in grad school, I felt pretty confident that I was interested in looking at non-academic jobs. So that's something I had been exploring for a good while. And I've got a couple lucky turns that have occurred in my career, but I think maybe I'll start with the first one. And that was in 2017. I had about a year left in my PhD program. I was on a family vacation chatting with a cousin of mine who is a wonderful person, but we don't necessarily keep in touch or get the opportunity to chat too often. So we're at this family vacation, maybe happens once every 5 years. And I was talking to my cousin about how, I'm interested in non-academic jobs. I want to be able to work remotely. I feel like consulting is something I'm really interested in, but I really don't know much about. And as I was telling her a bit about the work that I did, most of my research in academia was focused on public health nutrition, interventions with nutrition education, cooking, gardening, food security, that kind of stuff. And talking to her about the experience I had, my cousin was like, well, just to make sure you know, the buzzword you're looking for is evaluation. Like, this is the word you need to use when you're looking for jobs, when you're, trying to learn more about consulting in this area. And I certainly knew what program evaluation was. I knew that the applied research I was doing was program evaluation. But my cousin Angela is the one who said, you got to go to AEA. And that was really, really pivotal for me, discovering this community. So I attended AEA in November of 2017. I took Matt's Introduction to Consulting workshop. And all of that was, I certainly would not be where I am today had those events not occurred. And it took me a little while after the consulting workshop to actually dive in. So it wasn't until the end of 2020 that I quit my full-time job, and I didn't start my company until January 2021. So there was a long period of kind of marinating on this idea and trying to figure out if it was the right path for me. But I'm, a year in and feeling very confident that it was. So I'll leave it there, and I can tell you more about some other lucky situations I found myself in. But that's probably the first one, is just happening to have a conversation that led me to AEA.
Well, I felt the same way when I first joined. When I first went to my first AEA, it was Anaheim, 2011. I had just left what I felt was my professional association with ASH, the Association for the Study of Higher Education. And I thought, I'm doing this whole evaluation thing independently. I better figure out this new professional association. And I showed up, and true story, Ann Price and Susan Wolf, who you guys all see here frequently, and they've become good colleagues of mine. They were there, and it was just like I started going to the IC TIG sessions, and it was like immediate, like these are my people. Where they've been all my life, and that's how I felt then, and still feel that way now. Tell me, by way of thumbs up, you can find that reactions at the bottom. Feel free to let me know if you felt the same way. You can do a little thumbs up in your thing. Just curious if anybody else felt that way. Thanks, Kurt, Amy. I'm going to pass it on to Michael now. Michael, why don't you give us a little bit of background? Tell us about something that's been lucky or fortunate in your experience as an independent consultant.
Yeah, well, it's less on the independent consultant side, but I'll get a key element to my origin story. Involves a little bit of luck, and I was not bitten by a radioactive spider. But Michael Bradley. I run one-person shop doing independent consulting for mostly nonprofit organizations. My background I've been incorporated for about a year. About half a year. It was July of 2021. Prior to that, I was the director of research and evaluation at an organization called iMentor, who runs a mentoring program for high school kids across the country, to help with post-secondary access and success. So post-secondary is kind of my sweet spot. But I'd been there about 8 years by the time I left and switched over to independent consulting. And prior to that, I worked at a charter school network, and prior to that, I was in grad school. But while I was in grad school, I was studying applied psychology. Was the program, but similarly, I knew I was like, I'm going to do some data collection out in the real world, do an analysis of that. I knew academia wasn't for me. But I was working at a community college, and I was helping with a grant about a service learning program. And we had our external evaluator coming in that day and coming into the campus. And I was sitting in my office, and all of a sudden my chair starts shaking. And I think it's my friend Al behind me just kind of messing around with me. I'm like, Al. I turn and I look, and I see that the lights are swaying and the file cabinets are moving back and forth. Turns out it was an earthquake. And so if anybody's in the Northeast or Mid-Atlantic, it was 2011. There was this earthquake in Virginia that was felt up and down the coast. And there weren't any injuries. Nobody died. But it was shocking. Like, I'd never experienced an earthquake before. But so this meeting happens, and the only people that show up are the evaluator and me, and everybody else, all these other professors that were supposed to be there, nobody else shows up. So we don't know what's happening. So we just end up talking for a bit, and I'm just getting to know him, and he talks about all the work that he's got. He's working on his PhD, and there's a point in the conversation where I'm like, hey, sounds like you need some help. Why don't you hire me? And a week later, he calls me back, have an interview, and then ultimately a year later, he brings me into a full-time job, and that kind of set the path of my career. So, I'm not praying for natural disasters to be a stroke of luck, but it worked out in my favor that time, and yeah. So yeah, like I said, earthquake is a key part of my origin story, which is kind of strange, but hey, I'm here today.
Isn't that funny how we find connection through, well, thankfully there wasn't any tragedy involved, but at least through fear of tragedy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So hey, I found the 4-leaf clover symbol there. You can put that in there today too. So Emma, you are not a one-person operation. You work with a small consulting company, right?
I do. So I joined Danis and Company a little over a year ago, and we are a small woman-owned business, certified woman-owned small business, psychometrics and evaluation. And there are all of 5 of us now. And I I have a whole luck story of how I came to work with Danis and Company, but Jessica kind of reminded me of more of my luck origin story of evaluation, which was how I ended up going to the University of Iowa, which I will not defend to anyone. But what my experience there was, I'm from Iowa City, Iowa, where the University of Iowa is, and had gone home after college after living abroad and sowing all my oats, and had done my undergraduate in psychology and was considering pursuing a master's, but I wasn't really ready to move again. And so that's how I ended up at the University of Iowa. And I started with the psychology department, who said, we really don't think you'll be happy here. And I went down the list of graduate programs alphabetically, which meant the next program I looked at that I was interested in was public health. Ended up getting my MPH. And so the last piece of luck there was my graduate advisor was someone from the epidemiology department, Dr. Ann Wallace, who should not have been my advisor because I wasn't in the epi department, but because of how the college was structured and it was pretty small and young at the time, she ended up being my advisor, and she was an evaluator who specialized in qualitative data analysis. And so I think the biggest piece of luck there was I was actually lucky enough to take an introduction to program evaluation class as part of my master's degree, which not very many colleges are offering those types of classes. And then I took a more advanced class on qualitative methods with my advisor. And then she hired me after graduation to work on her evaluation contracts. So that was my origin luck story of how I got into evaluation.
So more common now, it's more common now for people to get their master's degrees or working on a PhD with the express idea of going into evaluation. But I can say from my perspective and from a lot of people I met when I first got involved, we're almost always accidental evaluators. Kurt, I know that's your case, isn't it? Yeah, yeah, a little bit. I never really intended to become a program evaluator. It was one of those things that happened. It just kind of fell in my lap. And so I think that's typical kind of story.
I wanted to add though, Matt, we do have another Iowan in the audience today.
Oh, no.
Somebody I went to high school with, Megan Rexton. She's waving now.
I know, she's a UNI person.
Yes,
we don't even
but she
recognize
went.
them as an institution in Iowa. They don't even.
But Megan, you went to Iowa State, didn't you?
I did go to Iowa State.
Did you?
So
I don't think I knew that, Megan.
Yeah, I did. I did my undergrad and my master's there, and then I wound up working at UNI there for a couple of years. But yeah, Emma and I went to high school together.
Did you? That's amazing. So wait, you were at Iowa State. What years were you in Ames?
2001 until eventually I left in 2011.
I didn't even remember you. You didn't even, we didn't even cross paths. I was there from 02 to 06. How fun.
I doubt we ran in the same circles, Matt.
Well,
I was not a good student.
No, you weren't a good student. I was
No.
a doctoral student. I went there expressly for the purpose of going into higher ed, not evaluation, by the way, but I was working in the evaluation shop during that time. And I was aware of undergraduates. Like I knew they were there, but I had no interest in involvement with them. And I even then, I was newly married, and we were like an old married couple from the beginning. I feel like we should get back into the reason we're here today. So let me put this out to our panel. I'm just going to read a little bit from my original script. So I would say just being independent, whether you're independent in a small woman-owned business like Emma, or you're just a one-person operation, I think we feel like we're fortunate to have the kind of control that we have over our work and to work within our communities. When you're thinking about your kind of career path, do you feel like it's been more luck, or do you feel like there was something that helped inform that luck? And so I'll put it out to anybody who feels like they want to talk, but how do you create your own luck?
I'll take a stab, Matt. I was thinking about it this morning. When I think of luck, I think of a more magical term of manifestation, because I don't think luck means anything if you're not in a position to sort of follow where it leads you. So where manifestation comes in, I think, is in terms of creating space in your life for those things that might come up or that you're hoping will come up, or and not just creating the space, because we can't all just like leave a hole in our schedule or in our budget for something that might happen one day, but really cultivating the mental and emotional space for it and the skills to be flexible and nimble enough to jump on those opportunities when they arise. And also the sort of the skill set to evaluate, if you want to use that term, whether it's a good time, or to be able to kind of assess the pros and cons of an opportunity that comes along.
Yeah, I think that both with the story I told before, but also kind of how I ended up getting into independent consulting, like yeah, there's the opportunity that pops up, but like, how have you set yourself up to walk through that door, right? Like, an earthquake's not going to happen every day. Thankfully, that would be terrifying. But like I look back at that situation and how I got into consulting, and like one of the things I knew was I was like, I'm willing to ask a question to somebody about how I can help them. I'm willing to listen for what they need, and also be ready to say like how I can help. So just kind of putting yourself out there, letting people know know you exist, show up in some of these places. And one of the things, and I don't know this for sure, but like how I kind of got started was I realized I knew I wanted to make a change, so I started like posting more things on LinkedIn, and like it was like commenting on people that I knew, and somebody that I worked with like 8 years ago I commented on a post that she made. A couple of days later, she reached out asking me if I was interested in consulting. So like, I think there's just like a little bit of this, like just being there, which can be hard. It can be really hard to put yourself out there. It can be intimidating. It can be awkward. I think sometimes when you're able to do that, that's when those opportunities pop up for you that seem like luck.
What do you think, Jessica?
Yeah, I definitely, I feel like what Michael and Emma said, both are resonating with me. And I feel like when Emma mentioned, manifestation, I feel like that definitely, led me to thinking about, the entire situation of making a transition from a different full-time job, and, being able to make space for something new is kind of a privileged situation to be in, whether it's, that you've been able to put enough aside to quit your job, or whether you're kind of crazy like me and just jumped off a cliff. One thing that I took away when I went to the to the Introduction to Consulting workshop in 2017 is a lot of folks who were there were kind of saying like, you shouldn't, go out on your own unless you have some experience working at an evaluation firm, unless you already have, a client or a contract going that can kind of, sustain you as you get started. And I had plenty of evaluation consulting projects on the side, but none of them were ongoing clients. None of them were still happening when I decided to quit my job. So I feel like there was some manifesting happening there where, I kind of jumped off a cliff and crossed my fingers. And I did have a backstop in that I was still able to work some hours for my postdoc lab, and that, made me feel like I had enough of a parachute to do something a little bit crazy. But I feel like there was a lot of intentionality that went into making that space in my life to have time for something new if opportunities did come up. But I also would definitely want to acknowledge just the privilege that goes along with that of, being in a situation where, I'm in a dual income household. I don't have kids right now. I was able to do something a little bit risky. And there was definitely, like I said, several years of really just thinking on it before I felt confident in taking that leap. So I think making space for those opportunities is definitely something that resonates with me. And also, when opportunities did come along, I feel like the preparation end was just being able to do good, competent work when a couple people gave me a chance. And I think that really worked out well. So while I feel like I've been so fortunate in a couple of, right place, right time situations, I think that doing good work is what kind of keeps that momentum going and, lets you have that next contract with folks.
I'm really interested in this idea of jumping off the cliff versus kind of jumping in the deep end versus kind of easing your way in. So by way of reaction, let me know if anybody in the audience has did the jump off the cliff. There's my Clover. You can see I put it up in there. And who did the jump off the cliff variety? Megan. I know Megan did. Emma, you jumped off the cliff? Oh, I want to hear some more about this.
I did, and I did it during the pandemic.
I never would have done that. I never would have done that. I was like, I almost had to be convinced. In fact, it was my accountant who convinced me I needed to be independent. Like I wanted to stay with the university, and they're like, they're not going to support you. And I'm like, I'll create a research institute. I'll just do it. And they're like, but they're not even responding to your emails. And so I had to do it. But I would have probably been giving up all my money and been sad and depressed with the university before. But I ended up going independent. Emma, tell me your story. I'm sorry.
Well, I was saying I actually jumped off the cliff during the pandemic, which maybe a lot of people did that actually, because it felt like everything was going sideways anyway. But I took a diversion from my research and evaluation career to pursue what I thought had always been my true dream job, which was to manage a medical office. And it ended up being a complete disaster, which sort of the disaster piece of it kind of climaxed during the start of the COVID pandemic. And part of it was easy for me to take the leap because I really didn't feel from like a mental health standpoint, like I had a choice. I had to leave that job and I didn't have anything lined up. And I guess, again, the piece of luck that allowed me to exit that job and give myself a little bit of breathing room was that I had recently become a single mom of 2 young school-aged kids. And when all the schools closed, I was able to apply for COVID leave and just never went back. So that kind of gave me 6 months or so to kind of figure out what I was going to do next. And what I ended up taking, because I sort of committed to working from home, doing what I really wanted to be doing. And I ended up taking a part-time research position with JMU, James Madison University, working remotely. And that is how I ended up at Danis & Company, because the grant I was hired to work on was working with Danis as the external evaluator, and they poached me. So, taking that leap was incredibly difficult. I'm still paying that back. But I think that feeling like I was between a rock and a hard place kind of pushed me to make a choice. And I don't have any regrets about that.
Are you paying attention, Kurt? That's how we can get some more staff for our consulting practices. We just need to poach them from our clients.
You have to be very good personal friends with your client though, or they'll never forgive you.
So this diving off the deep end, jumping in the deep end, cliff diving analogy. I've got a couple comments here. Miranda wants to know, Jessica, how you convince clients to give you a chance when you're first starting out. How did you create your own luck because I know your story, and we're not going to throw Megan into this just yet, but she's the same situation. You guys moved with your partners to a new community and said, all right, well, I'm here, I got to figure this out. So how did you manage that? I think a lot of us are curious about that.
Yeah, I think the move component, the timing with the pandemic was really coincidental. Both my husband and I decided in the middle of 2019 that we were not going to be continuing in our jobs in 2020. That was the plan. We were going to move to Vermont. We both were going to start working for ourselves. And the pandemic arrived before we could find a house, which definitely, slowed everything down in terms of that transition and actually moving from Illinois to Vermont. As many of you know, we drove that 1,000 miles back and forth about a dozen times in 2020, hauling all our stuff in our trailer and dropping it at my in-laws. I will say that the majority of my connections, my contracts, clients are remote, folks who I have not actually had the opportunity to meet in person. So I think that there was definitely, a lucky coincidence in that I decided to start doing work that was going to be remote at the same time as the rest of the world. The main thing that really got me interested in evaluation and in consulting was that I did not want to, I wanted geographic freedom. We ideally wanted to move to Vermont someday, and we're able to, pull things together to make that happen. I certainly have made a few local connections. Matt can attest to the fact that he knew someone in Vermont through AEA who he introduced me to. Turns out she knows our aunts and uncles who live in her town. So it is a small, small state, small world. I actually just last week found out that a woman who lives down the street from me is an AEA member who also does food-related evaluation work. She's at a big firm, but like crazy world, right? Crazy. I met her at the local town elections last week. Not that we're going to collaborate necessarily, but making local connections is something I probably could put some more time into, to be honest. But I've been really fortunate that everyone, especially as of 2020, this field was already really open to remote work, but, especially with the pandemic, like the whole zeitgeist of the world seemed to be steering in that direction. So I found that, being able to leverage Zoom and these remote connections was really, really important for me, given that I live in the middle of nowhere. We don't necessarily have, I know that some of the local evaluation associations are like super active and have their own conferences and things like that. So I know that sometimes, being in cities, you can make those local connections. So it's been great to be able to do remote work. And I guess to Miranda's question about convincing those first clients to give you a chance, I think I can say that another area where I was really fortunate was just being able to join this community. I have a whole spiel I can say about how much I love IC chats and how they've totally changed my life and career trajectory. But I won't dive too much into that right now. I will just say that being able to come to this space every week and meet all of these wonderful people who are much farther ahead on this path than I am has been really awesome. I have been able to start a couple different subcontracts with folks who are, attendees with the IC chats. So really convincing people to give me a chance in the first place, a lot of it was just showing up at these chats, talking enough that people remembered who I was and, the different areas that I have expertise in. So some of my first contracts were with folks who are, part of the IC TIG, who are just bigger fish than me and have, more projects than one person can handle. So they've, asked for some help here and there. And I think that most of the time when I'm, working with someone new, it's usually smart to give someone new something small to work on, see how it goes. And, usually I'm able to be competent enough that, I've got some repeat clients and, folks that I can continue to work with. So I think that just kind of showing up at the IC chats and being enthusiastic and interested got me a long way.
And the IC topic chats are free, will always be free. There is one payment. Every once in a while, we want to call you in to be a panelist like today or ask you to do a presentation. So even Amy Schlotthauer, she's going to be giving a presentation on one of her favorite books, A Company of One in 2 weeks. So that's the only cost it'll ever be to you. But Jessica brings up a pretty good point that it's about kind of getting involved within your community. And I don't know enough about Vermont, but first of all, side story, I'm very interested in your elections. Did you go to like a little, do you have like a little, excuse me, city hall that everybody meets in, like the whole community to talk through things, just kind of like Gilmore Girls used to back in the day?
We do have a little town hall and we have town meetings, and the most vocal and passionate members tend to attend. There are some towns that actually do voting on different like propositions in town meetings. So they just did a bunch of measures March 1st and they have in the paper like, oh, this town, the 16 people who showed up decided to, legalize this or do that. So we don't have a like get together and vote as a group thing, but it was very much a social event in that everyone was coming out of our little town office all day. So all the people, campaigning and their friends were hanging out. So the woman I met from down the street is a mutual friend of the person who is running.
Yeah. So I love how Megan just threw that out there about the Iowa caucuses. I had an opportunity to do that. Now, Jessica moved from the University of Illinois. Now, did you attend University of Illinois, Jessica?
I did, not for undergrad, but I was there for my master's, my PhD, and my postdoc.
So another person that's anti-Iowa. We love this. This is great. I didn't mean this to be anti-Iowa today. It just happened that way. Sorry about that, Emma. Actually, I'm going to throw it back to Michael and Emma, and I want to ask about what reflections you have, but also what ways do you encourage yourself, or Emma, in your case, you and your coworkers, to kind of go out and create those connections that generate that luck idea?
I mean, I think for me, I ran a team before in an organization, right? Like, so like I understand like a lot of the processes of like how to document things, how to do the analysis, like how to work with people. But I think it's required a lot of humility and also curiosity over the past couple of months, where just kind of like saying like, I don't actually know how to run a business. Like I don't know how to create a one-pager, and I think, or I don't know how to create a website. I don't know, like I don't really know how to pitch these things. So I think there's been a lot of that as part of the journey, and also like part of the flip side of that too is, as Jessica is talking about this chat, there's Ann Price's chat, Kamani Lundquist's chat. I've found that people have been incredibly generous with their time and perspective. There's some folks that have been like, hey, could you take a look at my one pager and let me know what you think? And they'll send me like really detailed feedback, and they didn't have to do that. I've been really lucky and really grateful for that. So, but I think when you come to a lot of these networking things, I think there's like that one of the perspectives that's always helpful is that hey, like I would like to reach out to you and learn about you and your experience and learn from your expertise, and kind of almost expecting nothing in return. So like coming in with that genuine curiosity and kind of like that attitude of the humility, I think has been really helpful, and I've been really grateful. Matt and I talked the other day, and I've talked with Amy. I've talked with a few people in the room, and so Jessica and I were talking right before this. So, but I think just also that genuine curiosity of hey, like how do I get better, right? And I think that like a lot of times it can be hard to do that, to own that you do need that. So yeah, I think I might have gotten off topic a little bit, but I think that's kind of what stands out to me.
No, I think that's important. Go ahead, Emma. You brought up Gomani Lundquist. It's spelled with a K, but she pronounces it with a G, so you guys know. Gomani Lundquist. She has this monthly session, and she had it yesterday, so she'll have another one in a month. It's like, I mean, I'm sitting in the front row, if there was a front row, eating up everything she has to say, because she's got a very successful business and she's got great things. So it's like IC topic chats, except it's extremely directed, and it's a different atmosphere, but it's amazing. So there's the link if anybody you guys are interested. Sorry, Emma, go right ahead.
No worries. I wanted to kind of talk about the flip side of humility, which is kind of just being willing to say yes to things, even though maybe you're not really sure what you're doing. And, just going out on those limbs kind of with that confidence that I have this track record. I know myself. I know what I'm capable of taking on. And I know that I have some supports I can lean on if I bite something off that maybe I need to develop some skills around. And I have folks I can turn to for that to, in the moment, as you're doing the work, develop those skills. And you have that, that foundation of hard work and excellence that will support that. And I think that that's been really important for Danis and Company, because their existing evaluation portfolio was really based on, a single institutional connection and relationship, and have developed an amazing foundation that way, and have been able to pull in new clients through that connection. But in terms of being able to actually now really intentionally grow that portfolio, it's really requiring, in terms of seeking out opportunities or making new connections, and just being willing to say, I've never done that before, but here's what I know about it, and this is what I think I could do with it. And we just were having that conversation yesterday about, whether or not we're going to offer grant writing services as part of our portfolio. So, yeah, kind of the opposite of humility, of kind of having the chutzpah to say, like, yeah, I got you. I can do that. And then hanging up the phone and being like, I don't know how to do that. I got to figure it out.
And it can be so easy to read like a proposal or an RFP or something and be like, I'm in no way qualified to do this. But like, you
But I
actually
think I
are,
can make
like,
my sound like I do.
yeah, like, but like, yeah, very, very much agree with that too, right? Like, I think about, some of my own struggles with like trying to achieve perfectionism, right? And it's just like I will put a website out there and it will be like the phrasing will be perfect. I will figure out how to pitch to my exact client and do this. And it's just like, there's a point where if you're waiting for the thing that's perfect, you're not going to do the things that are good. And I think, especially, I don't know everybody in the chat, but I feel like in this group, like if you're going to put out something that's good or very good, like that's going to be fantastic. So
Yeah, I think
like that confidence, right?
for folks who are looking to kind of build that skill, I think the best place to start out is with your existing clients, or clients you've worked with in the past, who, like, if you have a relationship with someone, be ready to say yes to that person. So when they work on a project with you, and then 6 months later they come to you and they're like, can you help me with this? Just be ready to say yes. And because you have a relationship with that person, you already know that they have the trust and confidence with you to move forward with that, even if neither of you are really sure if you have the skill set.
I'm going to stop the share. I'm going to stop the recording. I don't want to stop the conversation though.